The morning air was cold, but not as cold as the look in her eyes. I stood there on the front lawn, my hands trembling, watching my clothes land in the dirt, one after another. A blue cardigan I'd knitted myself, the worn slippers I'd brought from my old home, the photo album with pictures of my son as a boy, tossed carelessly onto the grass like it meant nothing, like I meant nothing. Melissa stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her face twisted with something I could only describe as disgust. She didn't yell. She didn't scream. That would have been easier somehow. No, she was calm, cold, deliberate. "You've overstayed your welcome, Barbara," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "I'm done playing house with you." I opened my mouth to speak, but the words caught in my throat. What could I say? That I didn't understand? That I thought we were family? That I'd given up my own home to help them? The neighbors were watching now. Mrs. Kovac from next door peeked through her curtains. The couple across the street slowed their morning jog. I could feel their stares, pity mixed with curiosity. The humiliation burned hotter than any anger I could have felt. I bent down slowly, my knees aching, and started gathering my things. My hands shook as I picked up a blouse, dirt smudged across the sleeve. Tears blurred my vision, but I refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of her. "Pathetic," Melissa muttered under her breath, loud enough for me to hear. Then she turned on her heel and slammed the door behind her. The sound echoed down the quiet street. I stood there, alone, clutching a pile of my life in my arms, feeling more invisible than I ever had before. And then I heard it, the low hum of an engine. A car pulled up slowly along the curb. Not just any car, a sleek black Mercedes, polished to perfection, the kind that turns heads without trying. The engine purred as it came to a stop right in front of me. I froze. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out. Tall, well-dressed. His shoes clicked against the pavement as he walked toward me with calm, measured steps. He didn't look at the scattered clothes. He didn't look at the neighbors. He looked only at me. "Mrs. Whitman," he said gently, his voice warm and familiar in a way that made my chest tighten. I blinked, confused. Do I know you?" He smiled softly. "Not yet, but I know who you are, and I know her." His eyes flicked briefly toward the house, toward the door Melissa had just slammed. Behind me, I heard the curtain move. I didn't need to turn around to know Melissa was watching now, her face surely pressed against the window, trying to figure out what was happening. The man extended his hand toward me. "Come with me, Mrs. Whitman. You don't belong here anymore." Something in his voice, steady, kind, unshakable, made me believe him. I hesitated only a moment. Then I took his hand. As he helped me into the passenger seat and carefully placed my belongings in the trunk, I caught a glimpse of Melissa's face through the window. Her expression had changed. The smugness was gone. In its place, something I hadn't seen from her in a long time: fear. It hadn't always been like this. There was a time, not so long ago really, when this house felt like a blessing, when moving in felt like the right thing to do, the only thing to do. I remember the phone call like it was yesterday. "Mom?" My son's David's voice had been soft, almost shy. We we could really use your help. Their first baby was on the way. Melissa was nervous, overwhelmed. David worked long hours and they didn't have family nearby. Well, except me. I lived 2 hours away in a little apartment that had started to feel too quiet after my husband passed. "I'd love to help," I told him, and I meant it. The day I arrived, Melissa had greeted me with a hug, a real one. Her smile was warm, her hands resting protectively over her growing belly. "Thank you so much for coming, Barbara. I don't know what we'd do without you." We spent those early months preparing the nursery together, folding tiny onesies, debating paint colors, laughing over baby name books late into the night while David dozed on the couch. When little Emma was born, I was there in the hospital. I held her in the quiet hours of the morning while Melissa slept, whispering promises that I'd always be there for her. And for a while, it was beautiful. I cooked meals, I rocked Emma to sleep, I folded laundry and ran errands and did all the small, invisible things that keep a home running. Melissa seemed grateful. David seemed relieved. We were a team. But somewhere along the way, the warmth started to fade. It was small things at first. A sigh when I offered to help, a sharp tone when I suggested something. She'd make little comments. "That's not how I do it, Barbara," with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. David noticed, I think, but he didn't say anything. He'd give me apologetic looks across the dinner table, but his words stayed silent. Then Emma started calling me grandma more than she called Melissa mommy. That's when everything changed. Melissa stopped asking for my help. She started correcting me instead, criticizing the way I held Emma, the way I dressed her, the songs I sang. She'd swoop in and take the baby from my arms with a tight smile and say, "I've got her." I told myself it was just stress. New motherhood is hard. I didn't want to make waves, so I stayed quiet. I pulled back. I tried to be less visible, less involved. I thought maybe that would help, but it didn't. Because the truth was, it was never really about what I did or didn't do. It was about control. And Melissa wanted all of it. David grew quieter too. He stopped laughing as much, stopped meeting my eyes. I'd hear them argue late at night, muffled voices behind closed doors. My name came up more than once. Still, I stayed because this was my son's home, my granddaughter's home, and I wanted to believe that love, real, patient, family love, could fix what was breaking. I didn't know then how wrong I was. The house had become a minefield. Every morning I woke up unsure of what mood I'd be walking into. Some days, Melissa ignored me entirely. Other days, she found reasons to criticize. The way I folded towels, the time I went to bed, the space I took up in her home. Yes, her home. She made that clear. "I didn't ask for a live-in babysitter, David," I'd overheard her say one evening. I'd been in the hallway carrying Emma's laundry when I froze at the sound of my name. "She's my mother," David replied quietly. "She's helping us." "Helping?" Melissa's laugh was better. "She's suffocating me. I can't even parent my own daughter without her hovering. I want my house back. I want my life back." There was a long pause. "What do you want me to do?" David's voice was barely a whisper. "I want her gone." I didn't wait to hear the rest. I walked back to my room, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my hands. Gone. She wanted me gone. And David hadn't fought for me. Not really. I told myself it was just a bad night, that people say things they don't mean when they're tired or frustrated. I told myself I'd give them space. I'd be quieter, smaller, less of a burden. But it didn't matter, because Melissa had already made up her mind. Over the next few weeks, the tension became unbearable. She barely spoke to me. When she did, it was cold, transactional. "Can you watch Emma while I go out?" Not, "Would you mind?" Not, "Thank you." Just expectation, demand. David tried to play peacemaker, but he was caught in the middle, and I could see him crumbling under the weight of it. His shoulders sagged, his smiles became forced. He stopped sitting with me after dinner like he used to. I felt like a ghost in my own family. One night, Emma toddled over to me with a book, her little face lit up. "Gamma, read." I smiled and pulled her onto my lap, opening the worn pages of her favorite story. But before I could start, Melissa appeared in the doorway. "Emma, come here." Her voice was firm. "But Gamma." "Now." Emma looked at me confused, but she slid off my lap and walked to her mother. Melissa scooped her up without a word and carried her upstairs. I sat there alone, the book still open in my hands, my heart sinking. That's when I realized this wasn't just about control anymore. This was cruelty. A few nights later, I lay awake, unable to sleep. My room was directly above the kitchen, and I could hear their voices drifting up through the vents. "She's your mother, David. You deal with her." I know. I'll talk to her." "Talk? I'm done talking. She needs to leave. I mean it. I didn't sign up for this." "Well, where's she supposed to go?" "I don't care." Melissa's voice was ice. "That's not my problem." I pressed my hand over my mouth to stifle the sob that threatened to escape. Not her problem. I had given up my home, my independence, my routines, all to help them, to be close to my son, to love my granddaughter. And I had become a problem. The next morning, I looked at David across the breakfast table. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He knew. He'd heard what she said. Maybe he'd even agreed. I wanted to ask him, "Do you want me gone too?" But I was too afraid of the answer. So I said nothing, and the silence between us grew heavier day by day, until it felt like it might crush me. It was a Tuesday morning when everything finally shattered. David had left early for a work trip. He'd be gone for 3 days. I remember him hugging me at the door, his embrace just a little too tight, his voice just a little too quiet when he said, "I'll be back soon, Mom." I should have known then. Melissa waited exactly 20 minutes after he left. I was in the kitchen making tea when she walked in, her arms crossed, her jaw set. There was something different in her eyes that morning, something final. "We need to talk." I turned, setting down my mug carefully. Okay?" She didn't sit. She stood in the doorway like a barrier, blocking any escape. I've been patient, Barbara. Really, I have. But I can't do this anymore. Do what? I asked, even though I know. This. She gestured around the room. You, here, in my space, in my marriage, in my life. My hands trembled. Melissa, I'm just trying to help. I didn't ask for your help. Her voice rose sharply. I asked David for help with the baby. He brought you here, and now I'm stuck with you, day after day, watching you try to play house like you're still needed. The words hit like slaps. I'm sorry if Sorry? Doesn't fix this. She stepped closer, her eyes narrowed. You're a burden, Barbara. Do you understand that? A burden. I'm tired of feeding you, tired of tiptoeing around you, tired of pretending you belong here. Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them back. Where do you want me to go? She shrugged, cold and indifferent. I don't care. Back to your apartment, a home, a shelter, anywhere but here. David will understand. She cut me off. He always does. And that's when I saw it. The truth I'd been avoiding for months. She wasn't afraid of David disagreeing. She was confident he wouldn't. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking maybe she'd cool down. Maybe in the morning things would be calmer. But when I woke up, Melissa was already in my room. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't angry. She was packing. Melissa, I'm helping you, she said flatly, shoving my clothes into a garbage bag. Not a suitcase, a garbage bag. Stop, please. I reached for her arm, but she yanked it away. You had your chance to leave with dignity. Now, I'm done waiting. She dragged the bag down the stairs. I followed, panic rising in my chest. Melissa, please, let's talk about this. She didn't respond. She opened the front door and hurled the bag onto the lawn. Then she went back upstairs. I stood there frozen in the doorway as she made trip after trip. My shoes, my books, my sweaters, my photographs, everything I owned tossed out like trash. Neighbors started to notice. A car slowed down. Someone across the street stopped mowing their lawn. I wanted to disappear. I wanted the earth to swallow me whole. When the last of my things hit the grass, Melissa stood in the doorway, breathing hard, her face flushed but triumphant. You're not welcome here anymore. I'm done taking care of strangers. Strangers. That word broke something inside me. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just stood there, my vision blurred with tears, trying to hold on to whatever dignity I had left. And that's when I heard it, the low, steady hum of an engine. A black Mercedes pulled up to the curb, slow and deliberate. The door opened, and the man who stepped out, tall, composed, familiar in a way I couldn't place, looked directly at Melissa. Her face went white. "Hello, Melissa," he said calmly. "It's been a while." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. And for the first time in months, she was the one who looked afraid. Melissa's hand gripped the doorframe so hard her knuckles turned white. "Mr. Calloway," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The man, Mr. Calloway, didn't smile. He didn't need to. His presence alone commanded the space, quiet but undeniable. "I didn't expect to see you again," Melissa stammered, trying to recover. What are you doing here?" "I'm here for Mrs. Whitman," he said simply, gesturing toward me. I stood there, still clutching a blouse in my hands, completely bewildered. "I don't understand." He turned to me then, his expression softening. "Mrs. Whitman, my wife is your niece, Catherine." My breath caught. Catherine, my sister's daughter, the little girl I used to braid hair for, who used to spend summers at my house, who I hadn't seen in years because life had pulled us in different directions. "Catherine," I repeated, my voice breaking. She's your wife?" He nodded. "She heard from a neighbor what was happening here. She sent me to bring you home." Tears spilled down my cheeks, but this time they weren't from pain. They were from relief. Melissa's face had gone from pale to red. "This is none of your business, Mr. Calloway. This is a family matter." "Is it?" He tilted his head, his tone still calm but edged with steel. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're throwing an elderly woman out of her home, in front of witnesses. That's not family. That's cruelty." "She was a guest," Melissa started, her voice rising defensively. "She was family," he corrected, "and you treated her like garbage." Melissa's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Mr. Calloway turned to the neighbors, who were no longer even pretending not to watch. His voice carried clearly. "Some of you may remember Melissa Thompson before she became Melissa Whitman. She used to work for my company." He paused, letting that sink in. "Until I fired her." Melissa's eyes went wide. "Don't—" "For falsifying expense reports, for bullying junior staff, and for lying directly to my face when confronted." His voice was even, factual, but devastating. "I gave her a chance to resign quietly. She chose to fight it. She lost." The air felt thick with shock. Melissa was shaking now, her face a mixture of rage and humiliation. "That was years ago. That has nothing to do with this." "It has everything to do with this," Mr. Calloway said. "Because a person who lies, manipulates, and discards people when they're no longer useful doesn't change. They just find new victims." He looked at me again, his voice gentle. "Mrs. Whitman, you don't owe anyone here an explanation. You've done nothing wrong. Let me take you somewhere. You'll be valued." I nodded, unable to speak. As Mr. Calloway helped me gather the last of my things, I heard the sound of tires screeching into the driveway. David's car. He must have gotten a call. Maybe from a neighbor. Maybe from someone who'd seen what was happening. He jumped out, his face pale and panicked. Mom, what's going on?" I turned to him, my son, and for the first time in months, I didn't try to make myself smaller. "I'm leaving, David." "What? No, wait." He looked at Melissa, then at Mr. Calloway, then back at me. "Mom, please, we can fix this." "Can we?" My voice cracked. "Because your wife just threw me out like trash and you weren't here." "I didn't know." "You knew." The words came out stronger than I expected. "You knew she wanted me gone. You heard her say it. And you said nothing." His face crumpled. "I was trying to keep the peace. At my expense." The silence that followed was deafening. David looked at Melissa, something dark and broken flickering in his eyes. "Is it true?" he asked quietly. What he said about your old job? Melissa's jaw tightened. That's not... Is it true? She looked away. And that was answer enough. David's shoulders sagged. He looked at me, tears streaming down his face. Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I wanted to forgive him. Part of me did, but the wound was too fresh. I need time, David, I said softly. Mr. Calloway opened the door for me. Whenever you're ready, Mrs. Whitman. I took one last look at the house, the place I'd once called home. Then I got in the car. As we drove away, I glanced in the side mirror. David stood in the driveway, his hands in his hair, looking lost. And Melissa stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her mask finally, fully shattered. Catherine's home was nothing like the cold, tense place I'd been living in. It was warm, soft, full of light. She greeted me at the door with tears in her eyes and pulled me into a hug so tight I thought I might break, but in the best way. Aunt Barbara, she whispered, I'm so sorry. I should have reached out sooner. You're here now, and that was enough. Over the next few weeks, I began to remember what it felt like to be wanted, to be valued. Catherine and her husband treated me like family, real family. We cooked together, we laughed, we sat on the porch in the evenings and talked about everything and nothing. I wasn't a burden here. I was loved. David called often. At first, I didn't answer, but eventually I did. He came to visit, alone. Melissa, she said, had moved back with her parents. They were taking a break. I didn't ask for details. It wasn't my place anymore. I failed you, Mom, he said, his voice thick with regret. I was so afraid of losing her that I didn't protect you, and I'll never forgive myself for that. I reached across the table and took his hand. You're my son, and I love you. But love doesn't mean I forget what happened. It just means I'm willing to heal slowly. He nodded, tears slipping down his face. I'll do better, I promise. Good, because Emma is going to need a father who knows how to stand up for what's right. We still had a long road ahead of us. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight. But for the first time in a long time, I had hope. And I had people around me who reminded me of something I almost forgotten. I was not a burden. I was a blessing. When someone throws you away, when they treat your love, your service, your presence like it's worthless, it's easy to believe them. But the truth is, your worth was never theirs to define. Sometimes the people who pick you up are the ones you least expect, the ones who see you clearly, who know your value, who refuse to let you believe the lie someone else told you about yourself. Melissa thought she had won the day she threw me out. But what she didn't realize was this: when you discard people who love you, life has a way of reminding you you weren't the one holding the power. They were. And the moment they walk away, you're left standing in the doorway alone, wondering how you lost everything you took for granted. I didn't need revenge. Life gave me something better. It gave me peace.